A clipboard slapped against Marcus's mailbox. The man in the crisp fake uniform spoke like he had the law in his pocket. HOA enforcer. Violation. Grass too high. And you've parked the wrong way on the curb. Marcus didn't move. He stood by his car, arms loose, voice calm. Marcus. That's not a violation, HOA enforcer 2 smirked, tugging at his belt. In this neighborhood, it is. Rules are rules. Silence held heavier than words. Curtains shifted across the street. A neighbor raised her phone, pretending not to film. Marcus. Rules only work if they're real. The first man leaned closer, his voice dropping. HOA enforcer. We decide what's real here. You want peace. You'll listen. Narration pressed in like a whisper. For years, people had listened. Each notice, each fine, each false threat, swallowed without protest. Fear became habit. Silence became protection. Marcus's jaw flexed, but his tone stayed level. Marcus. Peace doesn't come from uniforms you stitch together. The smirk faded for just a second. He shifted, scanning the watching eyes. HOA enforcer 2. Keep talking. We'll see how long you last. The neighbor's camera caught the moment his voice cracked. Authority didn't sound steady anymore. It sounded desperate. Marcus stepped back, not in retreat, but in control. Marcus, quietly. You're used to fear. You won't find it here. The men froze. Their clipboards shook in their hands, just slightly. For the first time, the silence didn't belong to them. The weight shifted. And the neighborhood felt it. The notices stacked on Marcus's kitchen table looked almost harmless. White sheets with typed words, boxes checked in red ink. But each one carried the weight of years. He slid one across the table to his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, her hands trembling as she touched it. Mrs. Alvarez. They fined us for our son's basketball hoop. Said it was disturbing the neighborhood's look. Marcus. What happened? She hesitated, voice breaking. Mrs. Alvarez. We sold it. Then they came again. Said our dog barked too loud. After that. She stopped, eyes glassy. We just stopped fighting. Marcus leaned back, the silence pressing. Marcus. You weren't the only one. A younger man in the corner, Andre, spoke low. Andre. They ticketed me for parking outside my own house, wrote up my sister for leaving shoes on the porch. It never ended. My mom? She said it was easier to move. The table grew heavy with unspoken history. Each paper wasn't about grass, hoops, or shoes. It was a weapon, dressed as a rule. Marcus. Every citation told you the same thing. Andre. That we don't belong. The words landed harder than any threat. Narration seeped in like a slow realization. The papers were warnings disguised as policy. Intimidation masquerading as order. Families didn't just pay fines. They paid with dignity, piece by piece, until silence became survival. Marcus gathered the stack, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus. They've been writing people out of this neighborhood, one sheet at a time. Nobody argued. Nobody needed to. The truth was already in their hands. The corner house stood silent, its porch sagging where laughter once lived. Marcus stopped in front, eyes locked on the boarded window. Mrs. Alvarez joined him, voice low, as if the walls still listened. Mrs. Alvarez. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. 40 years they were here, always tending their roses. Marcus. And now, he paused, the emptiness finishing his sentence. A younger neighbor, Andre, muttered from behind, bitterness sharp. Andre. They left in the middle of the night, didn't even say goodbye. Like they were running from fire. Mrs. Alvarez shook her head, correcting gently. Mrs. Alvarez. Not fire. Paper. The silence that followed pressed heavier than words. Marcus finally spoke, softer than before. Marcus. They fined them for weeds, then for paint too dull. Every week, another slip. I remember Mrs. Johnson crying on the porch while he just stood there, holding the notice like it was poison. Andre kicked at the sidewalk. Andre. They wanted them gone. Simple as that. The truth lingered, undeniable. Narration settled in like dusk. It hadn't been a choice, not really. The Johnsons didn't leave. They were pushed, corner by corner, until dignity cost more than staying. Marcus stepped closer to the gate, fingers brushing the rusted latch. Marcus, this house isn't empty. It remembers, Mrs. Alvarez whispered, eyes wet. Mrs. Alvarez. So do we. The group stood in silence, shadows stretching across the abandoned lawn. No one needed to say more. The hollow house already had. The silence outside the Johnsons' house lingered long after the group scattered. Marcus stayed behind, staring at the dark windows as if searching for answers. His mind drifted, not to the past week, but years before. Narration tightened, quiet but unshakable. Marcus's name once carried weight. In briefing rooms, in corridors where men whispered about threats to the nation, he wasn't that neighbor. He was the agent who dismantled cells before they struck. His file, classified, thick, was a warning to terrorists who thought they could outlast him. He remembered one late briefing, the director's voice low. Director, you're not just on their radar, Marcus. You are the radar. They flinch when they hear your name. Back then, enemies feared him. Here, in the suburbs, fear twisted differently. The thought slipped out under his breath. Marcus, out there, I was a shield. Here, I'm a target. His wife, Lena, who had been waiting by the car, stepped closer, catching the edge of his words. Lena, you think they know who you were? Marcus shook his head, a humorless half-smile. Marcus, no, and it wouldn't matter if they did. To them, I'm not the man who stopped bombs. I'm the man with the grass 2 inches too high. Lena's hand brushed his arm, grounding him. Lena, then let them choke on their papers. You've fought worse than this. Marcus didn't answer. Inside, he weighed battles. Those fought in deserts, in towns no one could name, against this new war, fought with notices slipped under doors. Narration closed in like a whisper. Enemies with rifles never broke him, but neighbors with pens might. The house was quiet, though Marcus could still hear the faint hum of streetlights outside. He had just lowered himself into the couch when a soft shuffle of feet broke the stillness. His daughter, Naomi, stood in the doorway, clutching her blanket like it was armor. Naomi. Daddy, can I ask you something? Her voice was low, fragile, like she already feared the answer. Marcus nodded, patting the seat beside him. She climbed up, curling close, her head resting on his shoulder. Naomi, do they hate us? Because of where we live? The words cut deeper than he expected. He felt his chest tighten, memories of whispered slurs and the weight of silence in neighborhood meetings crashing in at once. He stared at the darkened window, his reflection split by shadows. Narration pressed in. He had faced men who carried bombs, who would kill strangers in cold resolve. Yet this small voice asking about hate, broke him differently. Marcus stroked her hair slowly, careful to steady his breath. Marcus, no, baby. It's not the street, not the house. He paused, searching for the gentlest truth. Marcus, they fear what they don't understand, and sometimes fear turns ugly. Naomi shifted, looking up at him with wide, searching eyes. Naomi, but we didn't do anything. He swallowed hard, fighting the sting at the back of his throat. Marcus, I know. That was all. Just 2 words, spoken softer than a whisper. The silence that followed carried the rest. History he couldn't unload, injustice too heavy for a child. Naomi leaned into him, her small body relaxing against his chest. For her, the answer was enough. For him, it was a wound left open. The newsroom smelled of burnt coffee and paper. An ordinary night until the video hit their screens. A shaky clip. Marcus standing outside his house, silent as officers sifted through files. His face calm, but the weight behind his stillness impossible to miss. Reporter 1, whispering. That's him. That's Marcus Hale. The others leaned closer, eyes narrowing. Reporter 2, Marcus Hale. Who? Reporter 1. The man who broke the Iron Cross. Years back. Took down half their leadership. Everyone thought he disappeared. The room shifted. Chairs scraped quietly as heads turned toward the flickering screen. Some whispered. Some just stared. The air tightened, like everyone was waiting for someone else to confirm. Reporter 3. That's not possible. If it was. Him? Why would he be here? Why would he look so ordinary? A silence hung, heavy. Narration pressed in. Truth carried weight. But rumor traveled faster. And in this room, rumor was already gathering speed. Reporter 4, lowering his voice. If that's really him, this isn't just a neighborhood story. This is national. The editor, who hadn't spoken, finally looked up from his desk. His gaze was sharp, but not certain. Editor. No headlines yet. Just watch. Listen. And for God's sake, keep it quiet. The warning only fueled the whispers. Reporter 2, muttering, he doesn't look like a hero. He looks tired. Reporter 1, heroes always do. The room went still again. The video replayed on loop, Marcus's silence echoing louder each time. Whispers crawled across the newsroom faster than keystrokes, bending curiosity into something heavier. By the end of the night, they all knew, whether confirmed or not, that the story had already grown legs, sprinting beyond their walls. The hum of the office clock was louder than it should have been. A stack of folders sat on the desk, thick, yellowing, stamped in red. Resolved. The officer thumbed through one, then another. Each complaint told the same story. Intimidation, racial slurs, property harassment. All brushed aside. Officer, muttering. Resolved. Every damn one. He leaned back, rubbing his temple. The silence pressed in, heavier than the paper itself. A younger colleague stepped into the room, holding a printout of the viral clip. Colleague. They're saying it's him, Marcus Hale. You saw? The officer didn't answer, just kept staring at the open file. Colleague, hesitant. Sir, these complaints? They match what's in the video. Same HOA names, same signatures. The older man closed the folder slowly, as though afraid of what would spill out if he let it open too long. Officer, quietly. We buried this. Years of it. And now, he stopped, his jaw tightening. Narration pressed in. The truth had never been lost. It had been locked, sealed, and stamped safe. But safety was fragile. A single clip, a face on a screen, could undo years of silence. Colleague. What do we do? The officer looked at the pile again. He didn't move, didn't speak for a long moment. Finally, Officer. Nothing, for now. Let it sit. But his voice cracked. The young man noticed. Colleague, whispering. It won't sit. Not this time. The older officer's eyes flickered, a flash of fear beneath control. For the first time in years, the files didn't feel like paper. They felt alive, pressing against the desk, waiting. And in that dim office, silence said more than orders. The heater, church basement smelled faintly of old wood and coffee. A circle of folding chairs sat unevenly on the floor. Voices carried low, like secrets afraid of being overheard. Mother, hands shaking. They fined me for paint. Said my door was the wrong shade. I paid twice that month. Still, they sent her my letter saying I owed more. Her words quivered. She glanced down, ashamed, though shame was never hers to carry. Young man, voice flat. They stopped me outside my house, searched me in front of my little brother, said I looked suspicious. That's all, just looked. The recorder on the table blinked red, a steady light capturing what had always been erased. Elderly man. I filed complaints, 3 times, never heard back. I thought maybe it was just me. The mother's breath caught, and silence filled the room before she whispered, Mother, it wasn't just you. Narration pressed in. For years, these words had lived in private, spoken in kitchens, murmured on porches, choked back in tears. Now, gathered in this dim basement, they sat heavy, in the open, no longer dissolving into air. Young man, looking around. They'll say we're lying. They always do. Elderly man. Maybe. But tonight, it's on record. The mother lifted her eyes, meeting the circle. Her trembling stilled. Mother, firmly, then let them hear it. Every word. The group fell into a quiet that was not fear, but a beginning. The blinking red light did not waver. For the first time, silence belonged to them. The blinking red light from the basement did not stay hidden. By morning, the voices lived online. A shaky clip. A mother's trembling. A young man's quiet fury. Narration. What was whispered underground now echoed across screens, stripped of shadows. Comment. Read aloud by a teenager scrolling, "It's just HOA rules. Everyone gets fined. Nothing racist here." Another voice, cut sharper, typed in capital letters. "This isn't rules. This is harassment. You don't frisk a man outside his own house unless you see him as less." In a living room, a father scrolled with tight lips. Father. People complain too much. World's full of worse. Daughter, softly, eyes fixed on the clip. But worse always starts with small things. Across town, a woman forwarded the video to her group chat. Woman, watch this. Reminds me of what happened to my cousin. Replies buzzed in. Same thing happened here. It's everywhere. Narration pressed close. For years, each story was isolated, tucked away, disbelieved. Online, they linked, one voice to another, no longer alone. Young man from the basement, in a phone call. They're mocking us in the comments, mother, steady, almost calm. And others are defending us. That's new. Silence stretched. On the line, holding more than words. Young man. Do you think it'll matter? Mother. It already does. Look how many saw what they wanted to bury. The video kept playing, loop after loop. Every replay made the shame harder to dismiss. And for the first time, the basement's silence grew louder than the neighborhood's. Denial. The video kept circling, and with it, whispers in the neighborhood turned into stares. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his coffee cooling. His daughter slid into the chair across from him, phone in hand. Daughter. They're still talking about it. Some people laugh. They sound angry for us. He didn't look up, just stirred his cup once. Marcus. Steady. Let them talk. Noise fades. Dignity doesn't. She frowned, searching his face. Daughter. But they act like the clipboard, the fines. Like it's real authority. Like they decide what kind of people we are. Marcus finally met her eyes. Marcus, quiet, certain, they think uniforms make them powerful. They've never met real power. Narration slipped in. His voice was not heated, not trembling. It was certainty, carried like stone. Daughter, hesitant. Then what's real power? Marcus, sitting across from them without flinching, refusing to bow, even when they want the world to see you bent. Silence lingered. She glanced at her phone again, the comments scrolling like tiny verdicts. Daughter, softly. It feels like they'll never stop. Marcus leaned back, shoulders easing, as if the storm outside couldn't touch him. Marcus. Paper burns, clipboards snap. But when you stand calm, when you don't break, that's when they start to. Her hand tightened around the phone. She nodded slowly, as though the weight of his words sank deeper than the noise online. Narration. In that calmness, the empire of fines, rules, and petty power looked fragile, paper-thin against the quiet dignity seated at the table. The following morning, Marcus stepped onto the porch, his daughter lingering behind him. The street felt heavier, the air thick with watching. A door creaked across the way. Mrs. Callahan, who had never spoken more than a nod in 10 years, stepped halfway down her porch steps. Mrs. Callahan, low voice. "Marcus, I saw the way they talked to you. Wasn't right." Marcus gave a slow nod. Nothing more. Narration. She looked around, as if afraid her words might carry too far. The silence between houses had grown dangerous. 2 younger men walked past, heads down, but their pace quickened. They didn't wave like they used to. "Daughter," softly to Marcus. "They look scared." Marcus. "Scared people hide. Brave ones step forward." From the next yard, Mr. Delgado leaned over the fence, voice tight. "Mr. Delgado, you're not alone in this. We've dealt with their kind before, just different uniforms." The words carried weight, unspoken history shared in fragments. Across the street, another window shut with a snap, blinds slicing away any trace of watching eyes. Narration. Some neighbors wanted to see, but not be seen seeing. Others couldn't bear to look anymore. Daughter, hesitant. "Why now? Why only after they watched everything?" Marcus's gaze stayed steady on the street. Marcus. "Because silence feels safe, until the silence burns your throat. Now they'll have to choose." Mrs. Callahan stepped back slowly, retreating into her house. Mr. Delgado stayed where he was, shoulders squared, as if standing his zoo. Ground mattered more than words. Narration. The street itself felt changed, no longer neutral, no longer quiet. Every open blind or turned back was a choice. A thin envelope sat folded on Marcus's porch chair. His daughter picked it up, frowning. "Daughter, another citation. They said the paint on the fence is—" Marcus, cutting in, calm. "Wrong shade of white. Again." Narration. The words no longer carried authority. They carried exhaustion, an echo of rules stretched thin. That afternoon, 3 HOA leaders marched up the walk. Their papers shook slightly in their hands, though their voices tried to steady. Leader number 1. You're now facing suspension of neighborhood privileges. Continued non-compliance will force removal. Marcus stared, unmoved. Across the street, blinds cracked open wider, phones lifted quietly. Marcus measured. "You think threats hide the truth. They don't." A silence hung. One leader shifted his weight, sweat marking his collar. Leader number 2, snapping. "This is procedure. You're making it hard on yourself." Marcus. "Hard was years of swallowing my pride so men like you could feel tall. That time's done." Narration. Every word landed heavier because he never raised his voice. The third leader noticed the small crowd gathering, neighbors stepping closer to sidewalks, cameras angled just enough to be seen. Leader number 3, uneasy. "You're turning people against order, against peace." Mr. Delgado's voice cut across the lawn, low but firm. "Mr. Delgado, peace isn't silence, and order isn't control." The leaders faltered. Their papers no longer looked official, only desperate. Narration. What once felt like control was slipping, thread by thread. Every citation read like fear. Every threat exposed weakness. Marcus didn't move toward them, didn't raise a hand. He simply stood steady while the street recorded. Marcus, quietly. "You've already lost." The men froze, caught between pride and collapse, their silence louder than any warning.